Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Token and Hobbs Show on the Think Liberty Network. We are so glad that you guys decided to join us tonight. We have a great episode in store for you tonight. I am, of course, Token. Allegedly. We always got to throw that in there. I am, of course, your host. I am Token, and I'm joined with my buddy in crime, the alleged Mr. Dustin Hobbs. What is going on, buddy?
Not a whole lot, buddy. Just apologize to anybody who was waiting with bated breath for the show to get started. We're a few minutes late because I was at City Council telling them why a mask mandate was uniquely un-American and stupid.
Well, why don't you tell us why it's uniquely un-American and stupid, Mr. Congressman Hobbs?
Allegedly. No, I didn't say everything that I wanted to say because I had to get out of there and do this because we know where my priorities lie. But essentially what I told them was 1313. But essentially what I told them was that that a mask mandate strikes at the bedrock principle which underpins our society, is the idea of personal responsibility. The idea that grown men and women can make the decisions for themselves and their families without what to do by their supposed betters. And I told them that good ideas do not require force, and conversely, an idea that requires force cannot be a good idea. So I asked them what type of city council they wanted to be, the kind that assumed that its citizens, the grown men and women of their town, could make their own decisions and take responsibility for their own life, or did they want to be the nanny state? I got a standing ovation from everybody, so I guess that was good.
You know what the answer is, though. I mean, it's the same answer you hear all over the place. They want to be the nanny state.
That's what I led my speech with. I thanked them for their time, and I said, however, I have a suspicion that with yesterday's hasty execution of the Health Advisory Board and today's unanimous recommendation from the Health...
Wait, they executed the Health Advisory Board?
No, they stood one up. Apparently there is like a 90-something-year-old law on the state books that a city of the first class, which I don't know what that means.
City of the first class?
Yeah, I'm assuming that's like in the state, but a city of the first class needs a health advisory board. And this law dates back to like the early...
Did we lose you? Are you gone? I think we may have lost Mr. Hobbs. I apologize for that, but we'll get him back. He appears to have lost his internet connection for now. So I'm just gonna hide that away so you guys can't see that. Well, anyway, he's been over at City Council. Apparently they are looking to implement mask mandates over where he is at, and he's speaking up against them as he should. Good for him. I have to commend people who are willing to stand up to their local governments and say, no, we are not going to put up with this nonsense. We are not going to put up with these mandates, with these lockdowns, with all this COVID bullshit that is ruining our communities, closing down businesses, and destroying people's lives. Right now, when it comes to me personally, the mask thing isn't that big a deal. I wear a mask. It's not that big a deal to me. It's these lockdowns that really get to me. And we had Karen Ann Harlow, she's the secretary at the Libertarian Party, on last night to talk about the Libertarian Party's reaction to these lockdowns. And I gotta say, for a political party that is all about individual freedom, that's all about standing up for our rights to be what we want to be, to act how we want to act, and live free. For a political party that was founded upon those principles, the fact that they've been so quiet about these lockdowns, which are the human rights crisis of our time, is really telling. And she came to the conclusion, and I agree, that it's probably mostly cowardice on the part of a lot of the people who are running the Libertarian Party right now. That there are those within the Libertarian Party who are so afraid of bad press, of being labeled as selfish or antisocial or whatever the COVID Karens want to call you. They're so afraid of being labeled as that they're not willing to stand up to the various violations of human freedom that are going on all over this country right now. So when Hobbs comes back, I'm gonna ask him how he intends to celebrate Thanksgiving this year, because this is a big topic for a lot of people, and we talked about it last week a lot. I intend to celebrate Thanksgiving same way that I've celebrated every Thanksgiving. I'm gonna spend it with family. I'm gonna spend it with those I love, those I care about and appreciate, and with those who make my life better. I'm gonna live my life in the presence of those that make me a happier human being. And there's no other way to live your life. I mean, yeah, sure, you can live your life locked away during this holiday season. You can shut your doors, stay inside, fear the co-flu until the vaccine comes out and you go get it and feel all superior to everybody else who dared to break these COVID lockdown orders. But I'm not going to do that. That's not me. And you know what? If you want to stay inside and be safe in that way, then you know what? Good on you. Do that. If that's what you need to do to feel safe and enjoy your holidays, then do that. But understand this, that I am not going to do that. I'm not going to stay locked inside my home. I'm going to go out. I'm going to live my life. And I've been doing that since at least June of this year. Right? So that's what it's going to be. And here's the thing about it that people don't seem to want to think about. Right? There's a baseline level of risk to living your life all the time. Right? When you walk outside your door, there is never a 0% chance of death. Right? There's always some level of risk to leaving your home. Right? You get up in the morning, you get in your car, you drive to work, you do your job, you drive back. There's always some risk involved in that. And for me, who drives for a living, there's more risk than for most people. That doesn't stop me from going to work. That doesn't stop me from leaving the house. It's a more than 0% chance of death every time you leave your house. At the same time, there's a less than 100% chance of death when you leave your house. Because we all understand you're not going to walk outside and there's a 100% chance of you being struck by lightning and dying. And nor is there a 0% chance of that. There's a baseline level of risk that we all have to assess as adults, as free human beings. We all have to assess that baseline level of risk for ourselves and decide what level of risk we're willing to tolerate. Now, for me, this COVID stuff doesn't raise the level of risk high enough so that I am no longer willing to live a normal life. Now, that's a decision that I've made. That's a decision that my family's made. That's a decision that that's a conclusion we've all reached looking at the facts before us. And that might not be the same risk assessment for everybody. Some people may look at the situation and say it's too risky for them. And you know what? Okay, that's fine. If you believe that it's too risky for you, then by all means, quarantine yourself until you feel safe. By all means, do it. I'm not going to stop you. Nobody is going to try to prevent you from quarantining yourself if that's what you think is the right thing for you and the right thing for your family. The only thing that I ask and that others ask is that you don't try to force your will upon us at the same time. Hobbs, you're back. Where'd you go?
I don't know. I had this blue screen of death suddenly pop up.
You have a lot of problems with blue screens of death, Mr. Hobbs. Your name went away. Let me bring that up so everybody knows who you are, Mr. Congressman. So I was going over my spiel about why I think that I was talking about there's a baseline of risk that we all have to deal with whenever we leave our house. Right? There's a more every time you leave your home, there's a more than 0% chance that something is going to kill you.
Yep.
And COVID just increases that baseline level of risk. Right? And it is up to each of us
Allegedly.
it is up to each of us as adults, as free human beings, to assess the level of risk that's out there and decide whether that risk, whether your tolerance for risk is good enough to accept that. Right? Like for me, like the baseline level of risk is up like a minuscule little bit because of COVID.
Right.
And that is not enough to prevent me from living a normal life. I assume you feel the same way.
Exactly right. I take my vitamins.
The
Try
vitamins.
to my vitamins. I try to eat healthy. I'm getting back in the gym and getting some exercise in. It's winter time and I work indoors, so I supplement with vitamin D3 because I don't get as much sun as I need to get. I haven't really been sick in like 3 years, other than like maybe a little scratchiness in the back of the throat. But when that hits me, all I do is I take a little bit of colloidal silver and knocks it right out.
That's good stuff. But I mean, or you could just, live inside for the next year or so. I don't even know. That's the thing about it. Like I told Carol Ann last night, when this whole thing started, I was down for the 15 days to flatten the curve nonsense. You remember that, right? 15 days to flatten the curve. Like the goal was just to get that curve down enough so that you don't overwhelm hospitals. Like that was the goal. That was the whole thing, was to prevent hospitals from being overwhelmed. Right? It was never about eradicating the virus or getting positive tests to zero. That was never what it was all about. We all had this understanding that you had positive tests, and then way below that you had hospitalizations. And it was the hospitalizations that you wanted to keep below a baseline level to where the hospitals could accommodate people who would have to go to them and seek medical attention. Like that was the whole thing. And now nobody even talks about that anymore. That's not even a thing anymore. Nobody even thinks about hospitalizations. It's all about positive cases. And the funny thing about it is that like the death rate from this thing is way down since this virus started. It's way down because we treat it better, right? We have better medication for it. We understand what we're dealing with better now than we did back then. But everyone is freaking out now more than ever.
Right, and that's the the other thing about it is that deaths are down. Not to make light of anybody who suffered because of this or lost a loved one or anything, but deaths might also be way down because those who were most vulnerable to it have already died. It just doesn't have anybody else that's vulnerable enough for it to kill. And I heard something this morning that the risk of death follows almost to a perfect correlation to what's called the actuary tables. Is what that means is like it's your risk of death according to your age. And you get like below 60, it's pretty low. And then as you get past 60, it starts to kind of hockey stick on up until you get up into the point where you're statistically unable to be alive anymore. And exactly along with that, if you're under the age of like 55 or something, your chances of dying without a pre-existing comorbidity is so low to be within the margin of error. And once you get up above 55, that's when things start to kind of your risk tends to ascend exponentially. But even then, the chances of death without a pre-existing comorbidity are still fairly low until you get up into 70s and 80s.
So before you cut out, before you had a blue screen of death that sadly took you away from us, I was gonna say this is the Thanksgiving episode, because Thanksgiving is in 2 days now.
Yep.
Right. And I already told the audience how I intend to spend Thanksgiving. Do you have any plans for the holidays?
Oh no, I don't. I might end up cooking something simple here. When it comes to complicated dishes like a turkey or ham or something like that, I couldn't find my ass with both hands in a map. But when it comes to simple stuff that I can throw in the instant pot,
Yeah, same
yeah,
same thing here. I am fortunate enough to have in-laws that love to cook and my mother who is a fantastic cook. So whenever it comes to holidays, nobody's looking to me. At all. No, don't look to me. That's not my job. I got in-laws and parents who are perfect at that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I gotta say, one of the things I am thankful for this Thanksgiving is that I do not live in a state that has gone COVID lockdown crazy. That has got to be the number one thing that I am thankful for. I'm not in California, New York, New Jersey, not in any of these places that are trying to limit people's freedoms and tell them how many people that you are allowed to see for the holidays. I mean, hell, they're not even doing a mask mandate in the state. I know they're doing it in different municipalities around here.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not. There's not going to be any statewide mask mandates. And as much as I talk shit about Pete Prickett's, at least he's not doing that, which in this day and age gets you a thumbs up. At least for me.
Yeah, and let's be fair, Nathan. You don't have to wait to Thanksgiving to be thankful that you don't live in New York, New Jersey, or California.
I mean, yeah, that's just a constant thing. Constantly thankful for that.
Yes. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that'll make an atheist praise God.
I want to talk about this story because Chris Cuomo. We've talked a lot about Chris Cuomo on this show.
He makes it so easy.
Oh my God! This can you believe it? This guy won an Emmy, a goddamn Emmy for his COVID-19 press briefings. Are you fucking kidding me? You're gonna give a politician an Emmy for press briefings? You fucking psychopaths! Are you for real about this?
It really, really makes you wonder. It's like they're really just rubbing it in your face. Point that it's all theater. It's all make believe. It's all bullshit. Because when you give somebody an for press briefings, that just tells you that their press briefings were fantasy, make believe, script.
From the people that gave Barack Obama a Nobel Peace Prize comes Chris Cuomo's Emmy.
Yeah, and that you hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, these people are out there constructing narratives and counter narratives in order to push this sort of political agenda to tell you that, oh, Cuomo's masterful handling of it won an Emmy, so he must have been right. Meanwhile, New York has the highest raw number of deaths in the country. Their per capita deaths are second only to New Jersey, which, given the way that they count the deaths for this COVID thing, it could be just people shooting themselves in the head and getting counted as COVID deaths because they live in New Jersey. It's like, I can't go on anymore. I live in Jersey. It's like, oh, COVID takes another one.
I mean, you got to wonder about it. Is the fact that this dude's brother is an anchor in CNN, is that the reason that Chris Cuomo, out of all the Democratic governors in the country, why he specifically was picked out of the hat to be the guy? I mean,
Well,
I don't. Maybe.
well, their father, both of them, was Mario Cuomo, who was.
Of course, his name was Mario.
It's me, Mario. But no,
What was it? What was it that that Andrew Cuomo got upset about somebody calling him Fredo?
Frito.
Frito. I
Yeah.
almost said
Or
Frodo, but not Fredo.
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 Frito or
So
whatever.
he's
Yeah.
getting he's getting upset out of being called Fredo. Meanwhile, his father was named Mario.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mario
damn.
Cuomo was a big shot New York politician too, and it says as a guy that's on Alex Jones show every Monday, a guy named Gerald Celente, who also lives in New York. He's like, he's a little boy of nothing. He was born on third base and thought he hit a home run. So yeah, he was kind of set up by, he wouldn't be anything if his daddy wasn't Mario Cuomo.
So these guys are kind of like the Clintons of New York.
Kind of, yeah.
Is essentially what you're saying. It's a political dynasty.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense. It's New York politics after all.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't expect anything different out of New York, would you?
Carl Cranbeck says the Democrats want to pay everyone $1,500 to take a COVID vaccine, so I guess I'm getting like 20 of them. You know what? If the Army hadn't pumped me so full of bullshit that I'm prone to every disease that God's ever created and mankind's probably ever created too, you know what? I think I might end up getting on that train too. Because I've had like 40 anthrax vaccines.
Oh, I was just about to say, I don't even know how many anthrax shots I've gotten. So many anthrax shots.
They kept losing my shot record.
Right.
And that means that you have. However, before I went to Panama 5 years ago, I had to get my shot records faxed from Fort Stewart to the clinic that I was getting all of my immunizations from before I went down to Panama. And when they faxed it over, it was 2.5 pages long, and the nurse was like, "Oh my God, what is all of this?" And it was,
you should be dead by now.
Right? Yeah, there was 23 anthrax vaccines shots on there.
Oh my God! Did you ever get the smallpox vaccine? Yep. Oh, that was the worst. That was the worst. It's disgusting because it's not like a regular shot where they just stick you and it hurts for a bit. You may get a little sick. No, it's a little tiny needle that they prick you like 50 times, and then it just swells, and there's pus coming out of it, and you gotta change the bandage, and you get a scar. Like I still have the scar from it.
Right, yeah, I didn't have that bad of a reaction. I had a little pustule, and it got gross a little bit. Like I had a buddy that like his whole fucking shoulder turned into a boil, and he had to like wrap pressure dressings around it to keep it just from oozing down. It was gross.
Apparently, you can get people sick with that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah,
it is a contagious virus. If you get that pus on somebody else, they will get smallpox.
Yeah. So, if anybody knows anybody who has recently gotten a smallpox vaccine, leave them alone. It's not fun. But I wanted to bring up Andrew Cuomo specifically because he had some very interesting things to say. Now, he has implemented statewide COVID restrictions in New York City, and they're very strict. And like a business, it's so ridiculous the kind of things that he does because it's completely arbitrary and anti-science, right? For example, schools in New York are not spreading the disease. They're not. It's been proven that they aren't, and yet they're going to close all the schools in New York again for no reason. Because the teachers' unions want them closed. And, of course, if you're a Democrat, you are at the behest of the teachers' unions. This is the same guy that was trying to define what finger foods are so that restaurants won't serve them. Like, chicken wings you can't serve, but sandwiches you can. Or some bullshit like that. Right? It's absolutely ridiculous stuff. So there are sheriffs in upstate New York who are going, we're not going to enforce any of this. This is bullshit. You're a fucking tyrant. We're not going to enforce them. And Chris Cuomo, the absolute fucking asshole that he is, decided to call these people dictators because they won't enforce his rules. He called them lawbreakers for this, which is incredibly ironic considering that there is no law in New York about any of this. These are just Chris Cuomo's edicts. He's just saying things and making you comply with him and calling it law, but it's not. So let's hear to what Chris Cuomo has to say about all this.
I'm not going to enforce the law. Now, how a law enforcement officer says,
not a law.
I choose not to enforce that law. I believe that law enforcement officer violates his or her constitutional duty. I don't consider them a law enforcement officer because you don't have the right.
Okay, let me stop you right there. His constitutional duty. So you think if somebody is not barging into someone's house in order to enforce a 10-person limit on a Thanksgiving holiday celebration, that they are violating people's constitutional rights? Are you fucking kidding me? Like you haven't even read the Constitution at that point. Like,
Right.
You're seriously telling me that if cops do not break up religious ceremonies and personal gatherings in private dwellings, that they are violating people's constitutional rights? You unbelievable asshat. What the hell are you even talking about?
He's got it like, there's varying degrees of incorrect. There's sometimes you got things out of context. Sometimes you just get the facts mixed up. He is literally 180 degrees from correct. When he says that I made a rule, I made a dictate, and the enforcement officer is saying he's not going to enforce it, he's the dictator? No, Cuomo, you're the dictator. Because you made that's what a dictator does. And saying that not invading somebody's space without a warrant is violating their constitutional rights? No, that is again 180 degrees from correct. That is a Fourth Amendment violation to bust into somebody's house without a warrant. You are once again exactly wrong.
And we have video. I'm going to show you video later of an example of police officers trying to enforce these 10-person rules. But I'm going to continue playing this clip for us.
To pick laws that you think you will enforce, and you don't enforce laws that you don't agree with, right? That's not a law enforcement officer.
Okay, these are sheriffs he's talking about. They can do whatever the fuck they want. These are sheriffs.
Exactly. That's the other thing that he wrong. He's like, I don't consider you a law enforcement officer. It's you know what, dude? The county sheriff is the highest elected law enforcement position in the country. Sheriffs are elected. They are not bureaucrats that are appointed by politicians. They are directly elected by the people. They are accountable to their constituents, which means that it doesn't matter if it's Andrew Cuomo or the New York State Police or the FBI or the Attorney General himself comes down. If the sheriff says, get the fuck out of my county, he has the supreme authority there.
Yeah, so, sheriffs are pretty badass. And
yep.
County sheriffs, that's the thing. That's the thing about it. I mean, in Nebraska, we have some understanding of how sheriffs operate because most of the state is run by sheriffs, not police departments. Like, yeah, you have the police departments in Omaha, Lincoln, maybe a few other cities around the state. But it's sheriffs in the vast majority of the state that actually do the law enforcement. And if they aren't enforcing mandates, then it's not getting enforced. Period. End of story. It's up to them. And I imagine it's much the same way in New York State, Mr. Cuomo. You don't have authority over these people. If they're not enforcing your 10-person limits, then that's it. They don't exist. And you can cry and bitch and moan all about it all you want. But they're not dictators for that. They are simply responding to the will of the people in those counties.
Yep.
Because that's who elected them. That's who they ultimately answer to. Not
Exactly.
you. Not you, Mr. Cuomo.
And that's why the founders set this type of system up, where we have police departments for urban areas and whatnot that are hired by the city and appointed and everything. And we also have the county sheriff, which is directly elected.
Absolutely.
On the nullification process that we have right up there with jury nullification. A county sheriff has the jurisdiction and the personal initiative on whether or not to enforce laws that may be repugnant to the Constitution.
Absolutely. So I'm going to play. Let's keep listening to Governor Cuomo explain to us exactly what he thinks a dictator is.
So you're not a law enforcement officer. You can't pick and choose. And if that's the way you run your law enforcement agency, I don't consider it a law enforcement agency. So God bless you. But don't ask me for help.
All right. That's enough from Mr. Chris Cuomo. I mean, I did just that's absolutely absurd. Everything he said in that statement is absurd and ridiculous. And I'm going to show you a clip of some police officers trying to enforce one of these 10-person rules. Now, here's the funny thing about enforcement of these rules in New York. It's very selective, right? We brought to your attention examples of Orthodox Jews attempting to gather together and celebrate religious holidays. And they've been shut down and chastised by the governor and the mayor in New York City. Meanwhile, if you're celebrating Joe Biden winning a presidential election, you're allowed to go out in the streets and do whatever the fuck you want. But if you're a religious person with more than 10 people in your house, this happens.
Oh, you have a face mask. Why do you care?
I'm talking to the owner here. But we had a complaint about vehicle parking in the front. Then I look up and you have over 10 people in a crowd.
So what?
Now it's an issue, okay?
What is the issue? Exactly.
The issue is...
No, now it's an issue. Now I'm going to shut you down. Now I'm going to come into your house and tell you how many people you're allowed to have in here. And I'm allowed to do that because reasons, right? Well, what law is he enforcing? What law is he attempting to make these people comply with? There's no law in New York that says you're not allowed to have more than 10 people in your house. That's just the governor saying things. And the police going along with it. This is what annoys me about all these Blue Lives Matter, support the blue, Trump supporting Republicans. It's all like, oh yeah, we support the police. We support the police. Oh no, the police would never violate our rights. They would never enforce draconian government mandates. They would never do that to us. And here you have an example of police officers going along and enforcing the edicts of a dictatorial governor. And they feel perfectly righteous in doing that.
John Cena busts through the door and go, you sure about that?
I mean, just look at this shit. Just look at this shit. It's absolutely ridiculous.
This is not a party. There's no music. This is simply a simple thing. They have a few friends together. What is the issue that you need supposed to come into my house and tell me that it's okay for a police officer to walk into my house and say it's okay? When you are the police officer, you know the laws, you know the rules. You can't walk into my house and tell me that it's okay. You would have been a normal person. You would have walked out and said, okay, can I talk to you?
Fuck yeah. Tell that guy off. Tell him this is my house. Come back with the warrant. And you know what? Come out with the printed copy of the law you're trying to enforce. Because I guarantee you, there is no law on the books. The state legislature of New York did not pass an ordinance allowing you to bust into my house in order to count heads of the number of people that are in here. This is my goddamn home. You need to get the fuck out.
Yep.
Very, very disturbing. The kind of shit that goes on. Oh, and I have another video. I have another video right here to show you to show you guys what enforcing lockdowns looks like.
It was fine. Get off the street.
This is what enforcing lockdowns look like.
Go home. Go home. Go home, or you're getting arrested. You're under arrest. Curfew. Go home. Go home. Go home, or you're getting arrested. You're under arrest. Curfew. You're under arrest.
What do I do?
Stay back, please. Stay back.
I'm not a part of it.
You're under arrest.
Stop
resisting.
What is this?
Stop resisting.
You guys are putting your knee in me. Get your knee on me.
This is another one of those arbitrary rules that governments across the country have tried to implement. Curfew, because COVID-19 can't possibly exist before the hours of 8 to 6. Curfew. Like, curfew is going to stop the spread of COVID? Like, that's your plan? This is your arbitrary ruling in order to stop the spread of a virus. The virus doesn't need to see. It's a disease. It's not going to stop just because it's daylight. Like, curfew is completely and utterly useless. It doesn't make any sense. The only thing it's good for is giving police an excuse to beat the shit out of people that they don't like. That's the only thing it's good for. And in the clip I just showed you, that's exactly what they're doing. It's pathetic.
Yeah, it's that was one thing that I forgot to bring up when I was talking to our city council tonight, is that this seems less like a public health issue and a cash grab, because at least as far as the mask mandate that they were considering tonight goes, if the cops won, it's a $25 fine. And the thing that Karen Ann Harlos talked about last night is that Americans have this unique oppositional defiance disorder, where if a city council comes out and says something like, hey, mask is probably a good thing, a lot of people would probably be like, yeah, okay, whatever. But a city council comes out and says, wear a mask or get a $25 fine, the response is typically, fuck you, I ain't doing that. Fine me, see if I pay it.
It's one of the things I fucking love about America. I fucking love that. Yeah, I'm just gonna disobey you because you told me to do something. Fuck you. I won't do what you tell me. I mean, that's a great attitude to have about your government that's trying to enforce rules upon you. Yeah, fuck you. I'm not gonna do what you tell me. And the more you try to place your knee on my neck, the more I'm going to push against you. And it's even worse when the rules they're trying to enforce are completely and utterly arbitrary, and when they just change the meaning of words to suit their interests. Like Chris Cuomo calling sheriffs dictators for not enforcing 10-man limits in their homes. Like, that makes you a dictator? Yeah. I remember very famous dictators were all about just leaving people alone. Okay? They're all about just, respecting private property and personal autonomy. That every dictator in existence has been all about that shit. And every freedom-loving country has been about forcing their own views down your throat. Like Chris Cuomo, he's a great democratic hero. Right,
yeah, if leaving people the hell alone is tyranny, I will deep throat that boot all. Me some of that tyranny. That's the kind of authoritarian sauce I want to smear all over my naked body. Give me some, yeah.
See, it's clips like those that get the attention of Nebraska Antifa. Just clip that 10 seconds right there out. Completely out of context, and all we have are you like, give me authoritarian sauce.
And now you all will have that stuck in your mind.
You know what? I think that I'm just gonna take that clip and make a GIF out of it.
Yes, we do have a GIF for everything, it seems.
We really do. And it's fucking ridiculous. I mean, look, people, look, if you really feel scared about COVID-19 and you feel the need to stay in your house until whenever, God knows when you'll feel safe to come out, then do that. You know what? Do it. More power to you. I'm not going to tell you have to come out. I'm not going to try to enforce my preferences onto you. You know why? It's because I'm a libertarian. And I don't believe in enforcing my preferences onto you. Stay inside. Do your thing. I don't give a shit. You know, it's only when you come out here and try to tell me, oh, you're killing grandma by going out. Okay, now I have to say fuck you. Now I have to give you the middle finger and troll you and make you feel like the jackass you are. Now I have to do that. You've given me no choice. I don't want to, but you're making me.
Yeah, the thing that I think probably bothers me the most about all of this has been the constant shifting of the goalposts in not only the masks, but in the justification for it. At the beginning, it was wear a mask to protect yourself from the deadly virus. And then when a bunch of people were like, well, I'm not afraid of getting the virus, so I'm going to just not wear a mask. And then the goalpost shifted to no, wear the mask. It's not there to protect. It's to protect everyone around you in case you're an asymptomatic spreader. And it's like, well, that doesn't make a whole lot of fucking sense, because if I'm asymptomatic, I'm not spreading anything. I'm not a immunobiologist or anything, but I'm pretty sure that you need a certain threshold of viral load in order to be contagious. And when you reach that threshold of viral load, you yourself are going to be showing symptoms. Now, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's just the way that I understand it. Now, the justifications have shifted too. At first, it was like, oh, too many people are dying. And then it was like, actually, once we adjust for comorbidities and other causes, that's not really that many people dying of this. Oh, well, a lot of people are hospitalized. Oh, well, turns out that a lot of those people might not have needed to be in the hospital on ventilators, and maybe the ventilators were doing more harm than good. People are getting sick. Well, that ain't the case either, Chief. We're having a lot of positive tests. It's like, oh, the PCR test, the one that the guy that invented it said it's not an accurate diagnostic tool. Okay, great. Yeah, and it's just this constant moving it back in order to justify it, because there is a subset of this population that desperately needs this disease to be isn't, in order to validate their own existence, because otherwise the only other alternative is that they were wrong, and them being wrong and that their hysteria was unwarranted scares them for some reason. It is an insult to their ego.
It's by remorse is what it is. I mean, you see this in a lot. When think about this. When people make an expensive purchase, they try to justify it after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, oh, I bought a PlayStation instead of an Xbox. This is why I think it's better. And it'll be some bullshit reasons. Like, oh, they do the same things. Oh, but it's better. It has to be better because I bought it instead of the Xbox. Right? It's by remorse. Right? Once you buy into something and you pour a lot into it. I mean, just think of it. If you've been locking yourself inside your home since March, you have to believe that was for a reason. You just can't come out and be like, oh shit, I lost an entire year, a whole fucking year, for no good reason. You can't just come out and say that. You have to justify it. And look at you, look outside, and here's all these assholes outside when you're stuck inside, when you can't go anywhere, when you're being the good, responsible citizen. And you see all these assholes like me and you going around just living a normal life. They're like, these guys are the reasons why I can't go outside. It's not because I'm irrationally afraid. It's because of these fuckers. These guys are what's really was. I can't see my family this Thanksgiving because Token and Hobbs are seeing theirs.
Yep. The another way to put it is everybody knows about the Nigerian prince scam, right? Now, obviously somebody fell for this, which is why they keep coming on, because eventually you're going to get some sucker out there. Now, when people get conned by these things, they tend to keep playing into it rather than admit that they got conned. You get conned once and it's like, okay, I can admit I got fooled, I got catfished, whatever, but to some people, they cannot admit that they were wrong. So they keep playing into it. They keep giving the scam artist money. And then when their family and friends are like, hey, you're getting cheated. It's like, no, I've got a personal investment in this. And any day now that $50 million check is going to come in the mail. And they've made such a personal investment into this scam that they fooled themselves into believing that it is something that it isn't. And that's exactly what's going on with this COVID thing.
Yeah, it's just fucking ridiculous, this whole thing. But this isn't the only topic I wanted to talk about tonight. I also wanted to talk about the so-called Kraken that Trump's legal team released upon us all last week. And I got to tell you, when I first heard it, I'm like, oh my God, every Trump supporter is going to be like, here's the proof. The election was stolen. And as the week has gone by, it seems to me like less and less like that's gonna be the reality. Like I have this feeling that there's going to be a lot of Trump supporters going forward who are going to claim that Trump is the legitimate president, but are just going to kind of be like, but Biden stole it. Now he's the president. I'm angry about it, but what are you going to do? Like, that's going to be the response that we're getting from a lot of Trump supporters now.
And wait, what are they going to do is they're going to wait for the next election, because that's what they do. They allow the electoral process to work. They don't throw a fit and riot in the streets and burn down their own neighborhoods and act like a bunch of petulant children.
Well, imagine that. Imagine that. Now, that is pretty... I have to say, I do have to give credit to Trump supporters. And I didn't think they were going to fucking go loot and burn shit down. But it has been less violent than anybody has predicted. Like, imagine that. It's not the Trump supporters causing all the violence all over the country. It's not them going out and burning down businesses. It's not them looting stores. Because none of that has happened. None of that. Even the so-called Million MAGA March, which saw several thousand Trump supporters, the violence there was caused by Antifa coming out and attacking elderly Trump supporters after nightfall. Like, there was no looting. There was no fiery but mostly peaceful protest going on. None of that shit was going on. But yeah, it's just, this is what happens after an election.
Yep.
Right? Especially, I mean, oh my goodness, I don't think I've ever seen a one-term president in my lifetime. I haven't seen it. I was born in '89, so I guess I was born in time for H.W. Bush.
Yeah.
But I don't fucking remember that. I don't remember that. Right? The first transition I saw was Clinton to Bush, then it was Bush to Obama, then Obama to Trump, and now it's Trump. Look, guys, there is the chances of Trump winning some kind of legal victory and retaining the presidency are like zero at this point.
Yep.
Right? It's not going to happen. Right? And you even have conservative commentators coming out admitting this. Like, I've listened to Ben Shapiro's show for the last few days, and he's like, yeah, the chances of him winning pretty nil, pretty non-existent. And then Rush Limbaugh was coming down and being like, oh yeah, this big Kraken that this lawyer Cindy Powell was supposed to release upon us. Yeah, that turned out to be a big fat nothing burger. And here's the thing about it. Here's the thing. So last week, Rudy Giuliani I gotta say, I still fucking hate that man from the way he went after Ron Paul in 2008. Still fucking hate that stupid asshole. But I mean, we gotta listen. He's an important person for some reason now. So he comes down and has this big press conference. He's like, we have signed affidavits from individuals in several different states that say that Joe Biden was bussing in truckloads of Biden ballots after they were going to stop counting. And it's like, okay, this is definitely something. But so far nothing has come of that. That's the thing about it. You can have press conference all you want, but something has to come of this. There has to be some court rulings. You have to bring it in front of a judge. Saying stuff in a press conference doesn't mean a goddamn thing. And so far, nothing has come from any of this. And the real big kicker was when that Cindy Powell lady came up and started talking about Dominion, which we talked about last week, I believe it was. The Dominion voting system, saying that millions of votes were switched from Donald Trump to Joe Biden, and that she was going to release all this evidence and blow the system wide open. I'm like, oh, wow, this is huge. That's a big thing. That is a real, humongous accusation. I am really looking forward to seeing what kind of evidence you're going to bring forward in order to prove this. And so far, nothing. Not a single thing.
Yep. And Sidney Powell was she was let go from Trump legal team yesterday. And so to me, I mean, there's a lot of things that could be going. When I say let go, it makes it sound worse than it is. She wasn't fired from the legal team. She was leads that she had free from the official Trump legal team. So she wasn't really fired. It's just she had her own thing going on, and the official Trump team didn't want to have her stuff kind of intermeshing and screwing up. So they're like, go do your own thing. We'll do our own thing over here, and maybe we'll meet up sometime later on down the road. Now, the thing about Sidney Powell and her getting up in front of the TV cameras and saying that she's got all of this and everything, she's not a nobody. She is a very high profile lawyer. She's the one that got Mike Flynn off the hook for all of the bullshit that they tried to throw against him. She knows what she's doing. So for her to get up there and levy these kinds of accusations, to me, this is her entire credibility in her career on the line. So either A, she's got something, B, she thinks she has something, or C, she's got something, but it's disinformation. And when she tries to bring it out in front of a judge or whatever, it's going to get blown open as being, a plant or something. Somebody gave her some false information that she decided to. Somebody of her caliber and her pedigree doesn't just get up on the news and throw all these things out there that could be libel and could sink her career entirely unless she thinks she's got something concrete. So we'll have to see what comes of it.
Like, speaking of possible libel, did you see what she had to say about the governor of Georgia?
No, I didn't, and I'm not going to hear it on this either, because anything you play, I don't see what it is that you're playing. So,
okay, well, she did this interview on Newsmax. I'm sorry, Hobbs, if you can't hear it, but I'm gonna play it for the audience. She did an interview on Newsmax, and she essentially accused both the governor and secretary of state, both Republicans in Georgia, of being in on it, quote unquote. Like, Dominion voting system was selling elections, is essentially the accusation that she's leveling. And she's saying that the governor and secretary of state of the state of Georgia were both in on it to sell the election to Biden. So this is what she had to say.
Let me election for Joe Biden. It's about 12,000 votes. And what you see, will Georgia switch?
Yeah, that's a total farce. Georgia's probably going to be the first state I'm going to blow up, and Mr. Kemp and the Secretary of State need to go with it because they're in on the Dominion scam with their last-minute purchase or award of a contract to Dominion of $100 million. The State Bureau of Investigation for Georgia ought to be looking into the financial benefits received by Mr. Kemp and the Secretary of State's family about that time. And another benefit Dominion was created.
So there you have it. They're in on it. They're in on the scam. And to me, this has to be what caused the Trump administration to really distance themselves from this woman. Because it's a huge accusation to say that millions and millions of votes were switched from Trump to Biden. That's a huge accusation as it is, because that calls into question every election that happened in this country, every single one of them. And remember that overall, the election was very favorable to Republicans overall.
And I think that that's the reason that a lot of people are calling bullshit on the presidential election, is because Donald Trump is at the top of the ticket. He had massive support. So where are all these mystery voters that are coming out and voting all down ballot Republicans, narrowing the gap in the House to razor thin, still keeping the Senate more or less, but not voting for Trump? It doesn't make any sense from that perspective, because Trump was the big draw, and you're telling me that people voted for all the down ballot Republicans but not him? That doesn't wash with me, and it doesn't wash with anybody else.
I mean, it does make a bit of sense to me. I mean, hear me out on this, because the whole election was about who are you thinking about when you go into the voting booth? Are you thinking about Donald Trump, or are you thinking about Joe Biden? And Donald Trump could never, ever shut the fuck up and let people think about Joe Biden. He couldn't do it. He had to have the spotlight front and center on him the entire time. So when voters go into the voting booth after all that, Joe Biden's been in his basement saying nothing this whole time, and Donald Trump's been on front and center saying a whole bunch of shit, a lot of which just sounds like crazy bullshit to people. So they go into the voting booth, they're like, oh yeah, Donald Trump, I don't think I really like him all that much. So they vote for Joe Biden, but they're not Democrats necessarily. They don't like Joe Biden. So they vote Republicans on the down ticket because they don't want Democrats controlling the entire government. I mean, it's not impossible to think that might be what a lot of people are thinking going into the voting booth, right? That they don't want Donald Trump, but they also don't want democratic homogeny over the government.
True, yeah, but you also, internal polling in the Republican Party showed a favorability rating amongst Republicans at like 98% for Donald Trump. So again, the numbers, man, they don't really seem to wash. It will remain to be seen. But personally, at this point, I think that it doesn't matter. And it's something that I kind of discussed with Lyman last Friday, is that so many people are laser focused in on this tree called President Joe Biden that they fail to see the forest behind it. And that forest is the fact that no matter what comes of this presidential election, Joe Biden or Donald Trump, whether they call it for Biden and they send the electors off and they put Joe Biden in, or faithless electors, or a contingent election in the House, which are all legal, all constitutional. They've been part of the Constitution since 1792. This would not be any type of trickery. These are all constitutional mechanisms. However, no matter which one of these outcomes comes, there will be at least 50% of the population which will have no faith in the electoral process ever again. And that, I think, is the point. I think that the Democrats put Joe Biden, who is uncharismatic, can't even remember where he's at 50% of the time, and they put Kamala Harris, who only had like 0.1% of the Democrat vote during the primary. These two monumentally uncharismatic and unpopular candidates in there committed massive amounts of election fraud to have them win the election in order to spur this type of constitutional crisis in order to destroy faith in our electoral system. I think that is what the whole point of this entire exercise is. And if you want to call me Alex Jones, call me Alex Jones, but that's just what I think, because I see that's where we're headed.
I mean, it could be. It could very well be. And whether or not that's the intention, that does seem to be the outcome regardless. It is a lack of faith in the outcomes of these elections. And I think it is important to note that Donald Trump has indeed allowed the transition process to start now, which is a good thing. Whether or not Donald Trump thinks he actually lost this election, it's still a good thing to have that transition process started, right? So that once all the lawsuits are done, once all the legal challenges are finished, once the legal process has gone through, you're not scrambling at the last minute to do a transition, right? So all this talk that we've heard for months about how Donald Trump is going to perform a coup, Scarface style. Like he's gonna hold up inside the White House with the mountain of cocaine and a machine gun and start blowing feds away as they come to escort him out. That's not happening, right? And of course, we knew that wasn't going to happen. That was always a leftist fantasy that never made any goddamn sense whatsoever at all. But yeah, that transition process is happening. There's going to be a transition, a peaceful transition of power, whether or not, Joe Biden. I mean, I'd say at this point, Joe Biden has a 99% chance of being the president come January 20th. I think the country has, come to grips with that at this point. And at this point, anything other than that would cause massive riots to erupt. Can you imagine? Can you imagine right now if somehow, some way, Donald Trump pulled out a legal victory and he's inaugurated on January 20th? Oh my God, this country will burn if that happens. It's not going to be because of Trump supporters celebrating. It's going to be fucking riots and violence all over the country.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Which is, I think, why the Trump campaign allowed the Biden transition team access to the GSA to begin the transition process. He even came out and said it's for the good of our country. I think that without saying as much, Trump is conceding without a concession, allowing the legal process to take its course while still kind of giving Biden the appearance of a legitimate transition until all of the legal processes work themselves out.
I'm thinking at this point, Donald Trump, he probably understands that the writing's on the wall at this point. Probably understand there's not going to be any judges that are gonna throw out entire states voter rolls. There's not going to be any legal challenge that keeps him in the White House. I think he's probably come to grips with that. And all of this is priming the pump for 2024 when he rises again. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be 4 years of Donald Trump doing these rallies. Do you think he's going to stop? He's got the taste in his mouth. He smells the blood in the water. He's like a shark. Right? He's not going to stop these rallies. He's going to keep doing it for the next 4 years, and he's going to run again.
Yep.
And the whole thing will start all over again.
Right.
And I mean, who knows if he'll be able to win the Republican nomination in 4 years? We shall see. But it's going to be interesting, to say the least.
Either that, or he's going to buy an ownership stake in something like OAN or Newsmax or something, and he's going to have that news network do to the Biden administration what every mainstream media outlet has done to him in his administration, which is pick apart and jump on and pounce on every little mistake and misspoken word and misstep and every tiny little detail that they can take apart with a fine-tooth comb. He's going to have it done to them.
Yeah. And here's, you have to at least say this. As bad as the Trump presidency was, we saw every single wrinkle in it, every single flaw in it, every little thing that Donald Trump did was blasted on the airwaves for everybody to see, right? Every little thing. And you know, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. The press should hold every single politician to the fire the way they held Donald Trump to the fire. But the thing about it is, that's gone now.
Oh, yeah.
President Biden is not going to be held to the same level of scrutiny as President Trump was. And that's a goddamn shame. Because we all know that the corporate media is in the bag for Democrats. They're in the bag for them. And they're definitely not going to hold Joe Biden's feet to the fire in the same way. We are not going. They're still pretending that the only scandal that Obama had was that he wore a tan suit. They're still making that bullshit claim because they loved dropping to their knees in front of Barack Obama. Oh, I love you, Mr. Nobel Peace Prize winner. Oh, Mr. First Black President, can do no wrong. You're a saint. That was them to Barack Obama. Now, I would love it. I would absolutely love it if they would have the same level of scrutiny for President Biden, but I think we both know that that's not going to be the case.
Nope. That's a shame.
That's a shame. Well, we're going to wrap it up there. You got anything else to lay on us before we call it a night?
Nope, I'm tired. I want to go to bed.
All right. That sounds good, and I can't argue with that. All right, everybody. Remember, if you want to buy any merchandise, go to roads2liberty.com. That's roads2liberty.com. And if you want more episodes like this, go to think-liberty.com or subscribe to Think Liberty on your favorite podcasting apps. Again, I talked to Karen Ann Harlos last night. That episode is already up on our podcast feed, talking about the Libertarian Party's, let's say, inadequate response to lockdowns going on across the country. That was great interview. So make sure to listen to that. And until then, you guys have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Hope you gorge yourself on turkey and pie and stuffing and whatever else that you guys love to eat on Thanksgiving. We'll see you all next week on